Hello again. I have here with me Noreen Harwood, and she has been involved in Philippine Frontier Missions in the last many years, starting 1991. She actually went to the Philippines as a student missionary under the Adventist Frontier Missions program. So Noreen, how are you?
I'm good. I've been involved in mission work since 1990 when I was still a college student. At that time, I wanted to take a year off of college and go to try out missions. I thought maybe I'd like to do it for the rest of my life, but one should test these things during college. So I applied for a student missionary program and ended up wanting to do something more interesting than teaching English. So I looked into Frontier Missions. And at that point, I had two options. One was Papua New Guinea, and the other was the Philippines. Actually, I wanted to go to New Guinea because I thought it would be more exciting and more adventuresome and so forth and so on. But I was assigned to the Philippines. Being a typical 19-year-old, I did a little complaining to the Lord. Why are you sending me someplace that's 90% Christian? And it's a modern country, and why would they even have a need for frontier missions in a place like that? So I went anyway, and when I got there, I discovered that the Philippines isn't all that maybe some of us think it is. Sure, Manila is a very modern city, and yes, there are a lot of Adventists in the Philippines, but there are also a lot of tribal groups that have never heard the gospel at all, much less the Adventist message. So I did end up assigned in Mindoro among the Mangyans, and this was a definite eye-opener. I had never seen anybody running around in a bahag before, and I had never seen that level of poverty and ignorance and just the struggle to survive that they had, literally not having food from day to day and literally having children starve. I was at one point handed a little baby girl. She was maybe 2 or 3 months old. She was tiny. Just so tiny because she was literally starving. Her mother had abscess, wasn't able to feed her, and another few days and she probably would have been dead. So she was so weak she couldn't even suck on the nipple of the bottle for more than 2 or 3 swallows before she had to rest for half an hour or so. But that was their life there. That's what they had, and they did not have the gospel. They did not have a knowledge of God at all like we would imagine. They had no education, they had no options. So that was my introduction to mission work, to frontier work. And I learned that not only was this the condition in a place like Mindoro with these Mangyan people, but that there are actually a lot of tribal groups in the Philippines that have similar living conditions and similar lack of access to the gospel. Later on, after I had gone back to the States, finished college, I became aware of the existence of Philippine Frontier Missions and their goal to plant churches and bring the gospel to these tribal peoples. At that time, there were well over 100 unreached people groups within the Philippines alone. And as we have continued to try to reach out to these people over the years, there have been some churches planted. We are working currently, I believe, in 16 different areas to plant churches, and they're in different stages. But there's still a lot of work left to do. And I would encourage any young person who happens to see this, if you want to try the biggest adventure you could possibly be involved in. I mean, life's adventuresome as it is, but there's nothing like working for the Lord and doing mission work. It's going to be something you could not even begin to imagine, something that no one could explain to you. I could stand here and tell stories all day, but you won't get it unless you actually go. So if you want to try something that is unlike anything else that you can do in this life, go become a missionary somewhere for someone in some capacity. Even if it's only for a couple of weeks, it will be life-changing. And you will see things and experience things that you can't even imagine now. You will see the Lord work, and you will see miracles, and it's incredible. I ended up spending my life being involved with missions. You know, here we are, what, 27 years later from my first trip, and I am still involving myself in missions. I've been back to the Philippines another 8 or 9 times, working with Philippine Frontier Missions. I've been privileged to go to Brazil and Mexico with mission groups as well. And there's many things that are different between all the different places, but there's some things that are the same, and that is God's work is always there, God's hand is always there, and God is always going to be doing something. So if you're a young person or even an older person, get involved somehow. If you think you can't leave for a trip, you can still pray for those missionaries, because God's work operates on prayer. More than just about anything else, it's the prayers of God's people that are the fuel behind what is happening in His work. So I would encourage you to start praying right now, look into the service, and you know, there's other ways to support and sponsor as well. But do involve yourself. You will never regret it. I have never heard one person who has been on a mission trip say later that they hated it or regretted going and would never go again. You may not believe it now, but you will once you try it. So give God a chance and see what happens.